I think we're live. I think we're doing it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Today is the 220-1001 Core 1 A Plus study group. Coming to you live from Messer Studios. I have to apologize for the bird cam. This is the view from behind me that I put in a new light for the background, and it's spilling over a little bit. I have some egg crates on order, so that will focus and remove a lot of the glare that you see in that upper corner. See how it's kind of bright. I could turn the light off. Let's see. Can I turn the light off? That is the back right light. So see how wow, that's very different. It gets very dark in here. But then we got a whole corner of the room that's just dark. So let's turn it up. This is definitely not a green screen. So maybe that proves it. Maybe that's what it does. Hey, chat room. I need to pop out the chat so I can see what's going on here. Pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. And let's go to stream health so I can see how healthy I am. How healthy I am with the stream chat. Hey, everybody. Alita in the chat room purchased my Network Plus notes and says, I am very satisfied. Thank you so much for that. I try to put all the good stuff into those course notes so that you can have really a nice, quick, easy access to everything. So it's nice that it's nice to hear when people are able to use it. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Hello, St. Vincent is here again from Vintage Computer Services. Thanks for being here. Hi, everybody. This is one of those. Wow, and a super chat already. Boom, we just started. Ahmad with the $4.99 super chat, throwing it down, starting the show off. We haven't even technically started. Ahmed says, I've got my A+ with your help scheduled both in 1 week. Wow, you're a crazy man. You are a lunatic, but you did it. Congratulations. He says, thank you. Security Plus and Network Plus are next. Wow. That is fantastic. Congratulations on your A+, and best of luck with Security Plus and Network Plus. So it's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. And thank you for the super chat as well. Thank you for that support. That is so nice to see when that comes up. I love when the colorful super chats show up here. That always helps. Every little bit helps keeps this crazy experiment going. So I appreciate that. Jack in the chat room says, taking my 1001 in 9 days. We are counting it down. So this will be your last A+ study group before that event occurs. We'll talk about timing and everything else as we go there. And then Alex in the chat room says, got my A+ earlier this year, thanks to you. This is the pre-show. We get started here in about 6 minutes. This is not technically the study group. I mean, technically it is, but technically it's not. We're not started yet. We're getting there. I got a lot going on here. I have been moving things around in the studio a bit. I have been running cables and moving where equipment happens to be. On the left and right side, it's hard to see in this view, but I have a 19-inch rack on the left and a 19-inch rack on the right. And I've been moving around where things go. I found some cabling problems that I had to correct. And to correct those cabling problems required me to move equipment. You know how this goes. So that's what I've been doing over this little gap of time between last month and now, is trying to get that adjusted. So hopefully, a knock on something, that we are in pretty good shape with cabling. I did find a couple of problems that could possibly creep up. There are things I have to resolve into the future, but everything's working so far, which is great. So that's always good. Hello, Jamaica and Morocco and Somalia. Thank you for being here. Hello, chat room. Hello, people that are getting here in the chat room. Thanks for joining us. We'll be starting in about 4.5 minutes. Just got my notification. Very, very nice. Thank you. Sam in the chat room says, pass the 1001. Congratulations. Now prepping for the 1002 And our 1002 study group is 2 days from now on Thursday this week. So I'm trying to cram everything in here at the beginning of December, as I normally do. Hello, everyone. Hello, Kentucky. Thought this was Network Plus. Network Plus is next week. I always have all of the events in the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar or the events area of the Discord. I keep everything in there as well. They added a calendar, an events calendar in Discord. So I'm putting them in there as well. So if you're part of our Discord, it's there. If you're not part of our Discord, what are you waiting for? Go to professormesser.com/Discord and join us there. It's nice to have that there. We got plenty going on. Hey, Philly, thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in. Hey, Charlotte. Haven't been to Charlotte in a while. I used to go to Charlotte, I don't know, every week, every other week. Yeah, I used to have an odd territory. My territory was South Florida and South Carolina. That was my territory. I had the Souths. I didn't have South Dakota, but I had South Florida and South Carolina. And I would fly into Charlotte because the account manager lived in Charlotte, and we would drive down to South Carolina because it's right there on the border, and do all of our calls. So I miss going up to Charlotte. It was such nice folks there, and it's a beautiful city and just a nice part of the world that's there. Nice to have it there. All right, we got lots to go through today. I did questions, and I don't remember what the questions are. I've been writing so many questions over these last few weeks for both live streams and other things that we're working on that I forget what's here. We're going to have to figure it out. Hello, Providence. Thanks for being here. UK's checking in. Thanks for being here as well. There's Kansas City. Which one? We'd like to know. Springfield, VA, welcome. Nice to have you here as well. We have questions in the first hour, and then the last hour is just taking questions from the chat room. So I sort of ask the questions in the first part, and you ask the questions in the second part. That's how it works for some reason. We've got Ireland checking in. Thanks for being here. There's my Florida folks. Thanks for being here. There's Liberty, South Carolina, checking in now. Speaking of South Carolina. California's here. Lexington is here. Austin, Newport News, Virginia. These are saved on my YouTube channel. There are also links from my chat room. There is a category on the category section of the sidebar where you can jump to the set of study groups that you would like. So it's always there. There's Tampa and Ocala. We're checking in now. Florida's here. Hello, Fayetteville, Arkansas, and DFW. Haven't been to Dallas in a while either. Used to fly in and out of there a lot. I worked for a company that was headquartered there in Plano, so I would go there quite a bit. Is Network Plus one of the harder tests? I wouldn't say harder relative to the others. It's about the same as the others in difficulty, but it's a challenging exam. They're all challenging. And there's San Antonio. Harlem, New York, welcome. Indianapolis, Indiana. 2 of them. Boom, boom. Romania, Birmingham, Alabama. We're close to Alabama here. Got kinfolk in Alabama, as we say here in the South. I got kinfolk. I don't know where they are in Alabama. That's how close I am to the kinfolk, because I'm not exactly sure where in Alabama they are. But I know that they're there. Hello, Jacksonville and Alberta. See, Canada's checking in. I'll let Mrs. Professor Messer know. There's Norway. There's Alberta. There's South Bend, Indiana. Orlando checking in. Welcome. Temecula, California. Thanks for being here. New York, Houston, Cameroon, Seattle. A lot of this stuff. Do I have any hobbies outside of IT? Are there hobbies outside of IT? I'm not aware of any. So I guess that's a no, right? It's top of the hour. It's time to get started. I'm kind of slowing up here. Let's get a green light. Green light's there. Looks very good. That looks good. Cameras look good. We are recording. We're streaming. It's time to do a live stream, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2021 Professor Messer A+ study group, specifically our Core 1 A+ study group. Thanks for being here. We have an hour of Q&A that I prepared for you that go directly to the CompTIA Core 1 exam objectives. So stick around. I'll tell you in a moment how you can participate live with that. We've also got you asking questions of me in the second hour. So stick around for the after show. We usually do that in the second hour. If you would like to participate live, there's the links. I knew they were here somewhere. Those links are at professormesser.com/QA. If you visit that particular link, you will find that there is a question already waiting there for you. Now, if you'd like to do this on your app, there's, of course, an app for this. There's always an app for this. Go to your favorite app store and download the Socrative Student app. That's what you're looking for. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer. Make sure you spell it right, PROFESSORMESSER. You'll find that on your favorite app store. It may just be easier to pop open a new browser window, go to professormesser.com/QA and sit there. This is something that is only available if you are here live watching this as we are streaming it. If you're watching this on the replay, well, you can ignore all that, but you can still follow along with us as we go through this. If you do all of that correctly, there will be a question waiting for you. That question asks, a network administrator is connecting devices to the network at a remote site. Which of the following technologies would most likely be in use? Would it be a switch, a repeater, PoE, hub, or proxy? Now, if you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. No hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to visit this link, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer and see what's there. professormesser.com/QA. Plenty to go through there. I'm trying to keep my in-ear monitors in today. I don't know what's wrong with me. Are my ears getting larger? Are the in-ear monitors getting smaller? These are questions content creators constantly ask each other. What's going on with this? We're going to come back to this question in just a moment. Stick around for that answer. In the meantime, I want to thank you for being here. There's so much here happening. We just finished our latest Network Plus course. All of our A Plus videos, our Network Plus videos, our Security Plus videos are on YouTube. You can find us at professormesser.com/YouTube. Don't forget about our daily pop quiz questions. They are posted on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. I also have a pretty picture version of these. If you're an Instagram person, you can find the same thing over at Instagram at professormesser.com/Instagram. This is good. This event is good for 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. If you're following the CompTIA categorizations, I will explain how you can earn that CEU sometime in this first hour. So stay tuned. Sometime in here, I will give you instructions on how you can receive an email from me that says that you are here watching this because of the things that I will tell you during that time. So stick around for that. All right, the big question of the week, the one that is on the top of everyone's mind, is about when the current A+ exam will be going away. And the answer is not anytime soon. Not anytime soon. Now, I think the question really came out about this because the 221,001 and 221,002, which are the two current A+ exams, were released on January the 15th of 2019. Now, if you go to the CompTIA website, they say that the exams are updated every 3 years. That's not exactly true. They tend to release new exams every 3 years, and they tend to retire exams 3.5 years after their release. So the earliest time that this current series of A+ exams will retire, the earliest time is July of 2022. Now, for those that are CompTIA partners, we know that CompTIA is not going to be releasing a new version of this exam in January. Like most things around the world, things got pushed a bit as we are trying to get back up and running at full capacity. As you noticed, Network Plus and Security Plus were released over the last year or so. Those were released a little bit late. I think A+ is probably going to be released a little bit late as well. You'll also notice with the Network Plus and Security Plus releases that came out previously, they didn't do a 6-month overlap. They did a 9-month overlap. So it could be that the existing version of this exam may not retire in July. It may retire next year at this time. The point for this is just keep in mind that the retirement dates are at least going to be July. If you're studying for your A+ certifications, keep studying. You're on the right version. Even if they were to come out with a new version in January, which they are not, I would still be telling you the same thing. Because when they first release a new version of the exam, there's no videos available, there's no books available, there's limited study materials available. So I always tell people, just study the current version, the one that everybody has taken, the one that everybody is familiar with. And that would be the 221001 and 221002. The exam is a 90-minute exam for each one of these. You have to pass both of those to be A+ certified. On the 221001, which is the one we're talking about today, you need to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. That A+ exam for the 221001, you'll often hear this referred to as the Core 1, is mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. So there's a little bit of everything contained there. A lot of people call this the hardware exam. I guess there is some truth to that. But this is also the mobile devices, networking, and virtualization cloud computing exam. So there's more than hardware in this exam, but a big bunch of the exam certainly is hardware and hardware network troubleshooting. Also let you know that every single one of my A+ videos is available for you to watch for free on my website or on YouTube. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's nothing you have to put in. You don't have to qualify for it or find a login to get to it. You simply go to YouTube and watch it. It's that simple. Some of you would like to have offline versions of my videos. You would like an audio version. You might want my course notes. You might want my practice exams. Those are all available on my website, and I have bundled them all together into my Success Bundle. You'll find this at professormesser.com/1001success. So you got plenty to look through there. Have a look. It's a great way to support the site and a great way to get your hands on all of this content for a nice bundled discounted price. So something else you can look at as well. Don't forget about the free questions on my site. These are my Take 10 Challenge questions, which are archived from these study groups. A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus questions available at professormesser.com/take10. There's also a replay of this video available immediately afterwards on YouTube. I also create an audio-only version of this, and I release it in podcast format. You can find the link to that at professormesser.com/podcast, or simply look through your favorite streaming audio service, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. It's all there. You can find all of those in whatever form that you would like. If you are watching this on the video replay, one of the things you'll notice in the video description on YouTube is everything has a timestamp. There are timestamps for everything. Those don't magically get there. My marketing manager, Lori, hey, Lori, everybody say hi to Lori. She's watching the replay of this. She goes through and puts timestamps in. Takes her about a day to go through this entire list, listen to the whole study group content, be able to put all of the timestamps in there. It's a very valuable tool. You can find exactly what you want and jump directly to it. You can find that on the YouTube video description. For those of you that have not joined us on our 24/7 chat, there's plenty of folks there. We're always doing something there that's interesting. And if you want to find me or contact me after hours or during normal hours, you can find me on the Discord server usually. Join up. It's at professormesser.com/discord. And you'll be able to find that there. I also, as if that isn't enough, I've tried to find ways to save you a little bit of money. Never buy your vouchers directly from the Pearson VUE website. Instead, you want to save some money by going to professormesser.com/vouchers and purchasing your vouchers from my site. You'll not only save money, but unlike purchasing your vouchers anywhere else, you will also get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook that has 14 or so tips and tricks on how you can study better, perform better during the exam, and if you do have to take the exam again, I give you some tips on how you can do better next time. This will certainly give you a few points on the exam. And this is just thrown in for free if you get the vouchers on my site. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which was If I hit the button, a network administrator is connecting devices to the network at a remote site. Which of the following technologies would most likely be in use? Would that be a switch, a repeater, PoE, hub, or proxy? And if we hit the link, 55% of you say switch, 23% of you say proxy, and then we have single digits, 9 for repeater, 8 for hub, 5 for PoE. Well, if you are connecting devices directly to the network, you're going to most commonly plug this into a switch. That's what we're looking to find, is a switch. Usually there are these big racks of switches. Here's a nice picture of one. All of these cables coming in are coming in from users' workstations. So normally you're connecting first up to one of these switch connections, and usually you are providing connectivity to the rest of the world through a little switch that's sitting in a closet somewhere. It probably would not be a hub. It would be a hub if this was 30 years ago. You could say hub. Hubs aren't around anymore. They don't manufacture them. It's even hard to find them even on eBay these days. There are some out there. TIM 100 hubs, we used to hoard them when the switches came out because they were very useful for doing you would effectively, it's a patching into the network. It's very easy to connect in and perform packet captures with those hubs. So a switch is the best way to make that happen, because this was the question, which would be most likely in use. Hubs would not be most likely in use these days, but a switch absolutely would be the way to do it. Would not be a proxy. A proxy is commonly used for, well, we can use it for both outbound communication and inbound, but it's not a way to connect devices to the network. It's a way to control traffic progressing through the network. So that's not what we would do with a proxy. We would use a switch for that. And switches are great for connecting in. That is what we call our rewind question. It's a question from last month's study group. So this is a way to kind of get things started. We now are we're online with Socrative. We're able to answer these questions. Now let's do some new questions. And with the new questions, some of you know the very first question of the study group that is new is a performance-based question. I like to do the performance-based questions because they are a little bit different than what you might find. If you've never taken a CompTIA exam before, the entire exam is not multiple choice like this one was. Most of the exam is, but there's a handful of questions at the beginning that are not multiple choice questions. They could be fill in the blank. They could be matching questions. They could be putting things in a particular order. They could be drag and drop questions. There's so many different type of questions you might run into. So I have for you today a performance-based question. For those of you listening on the podcast, I apologize. This is a visual performance-based question because this is what you sometimes will find is a question. I'm showing the back of a motherboard. And on the back of this motherboard are all of these different interfaces. I've identified 4 of these interfaces, interface A, B, C, and D. And I want you to tell me what this interface happens to be. What is interface A? What is interface B? What is interface C? And what is interface D? See if you can identify those. We will, of course, step through those in just a moment. Plug them in. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's on your page right now. Go to that link and type in what you think it happens to be. I see a number of people already putting things in. This is a fill-in-the-blank question on the way that it's put online because I didn't want to give you any hints. It's not a matching question. It's a fill-in-the-blank. This is not a repeat. I just made this. It's brand new. I promise. Now, it's similar to other performance-based questions you may have seen in the past, but this is not one that you would repeat. I just made it. I just put the little boxes around everything. So I know it's brand new, but you're right. I have done similar questions every 12 months. I do one that is similar. So if you go back 12 months and look at last December, it was a question about different ports, but it was a completely different set of graphics and a completely different set of answers. So this is one I think you would do. It is similar, but it's different. So they're different every time. I like to throw up a little bit of difference in there. In fact, I sometimes use the same graphics, but I point to different interfaces for you to be able to do. So maybe that's something that you'll find in here. This is a pretty good one if you know your interfaces. And for the A+, You certainly do need to. I want to mention, by the way, early on, we had Fat Daddy Food Stamps in the chat room, which, great name, by the way, with the $1 super chat. Thank you for putting that super chat in there. No comment. Just wanted to throw some love our way, and we sure appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support. We like that a lot. There were some ports in here that were not listed in here, and since we're talking about that in here, I think it'd be useful. You'll notice this port on the left, it's kind of weirdly colored. Half of it's purple and half of it's green. So it's got a weird set of pins on it as well. That is a mini DIN interface. And for those of you that go way back with the keyboards and the mice, you know that we didn't used to use USB interfaces for the keyboard or the mouse. We used this mini DIN connection, DIN, and they were colored to be purple and green to match the purple and green colors on the mouse and the keyboard. Or was it the keyboard and the mouse? The keyboard was green, right? Am I mad? No. Or was the mouse green? I'm already imagining it different. This is what you would always run into, is there used to be two of these on the back, and you would have to plug in the keyboard and mouse, which used exactly the same mini DIN interface. We really weren't thinking about that. And sometimes you would plug in the mouse to the keyboard interface and the keyboard interface to the mouse. The mouse was green. Keyboard was purple. See, it was straight in my head. It's just when you say it, it doesn't sound right. So on this particular motherboard, it's got an interface that you can either plug a mini DIN keyboard or a mini DIN mouse into, and it would accept either one of those. Didn't used to be that way, but that's kind of nice to have that on this keyboard, because if you have one of these older, fantastic IBM keyboards, the big clackety-clack keyboards that feel so good when you're typing and bother everyone around you because they're so loud, those have a mini DIN connection on them. So having that mini DIN allows you just to plug in the keyboard and not have to do a conversion between mini DIN and USB. It's kind of nice to have that. But you could put a converter on it and just plug it into one of these available USB interfaces over here. So I've already given away that A, B, C, and D are not mini DIN, and A, B, C, and D are not USB. Let's see what they are. Let's identify these interfaces. We'll step through all four of these. Let's start with A. And if you look at this interface on the upper left, if you're familiar at all with plugging in your Xbox, your video, your video content, any of your televisions, they probably have an HDMI connector on them. That is a very common connection to have, that HDMI. This is probably the easiest one I give you in this list. Next to, I may be second easiest in this list. The one that's probably the hardest is just underneath. That is a DisplayPort connector. Now, the DisplayPort connector on the inside, notice it has that U-shaped connection on the inside, but it has one corner of it that is sort of bent, that's sort of hacked off at the corner. So it can only plug in one way. And it plugs in, and many DisplayPort connectors have a lock on them, a lock. So when you plug it in, you'll hear a click. And then if you try to pull it out, it won't move. If you're ever trying to push something into an interface or pull something out of an interface and it doesn't move, don't force that. Do not pull harder. Do not push harder. I guarantee you, because I've seen a lot of people pull their DisplayPort interfaces right off the motherboard. You don't want to do that. Usually there is a clip or something you push down on the cable that will release it, where you can simply and easily slide it out of the interface without damaging any of those interfaces. That will get you the first time. So now it won't. The third on this list, up here, old school VGA connector, those 15 pins, the 15-pin female connector, almost always a VGA connection. It's interesting that they colored the blue and the green, or the green and the purple, for the mouse and keyboard. They didn't color in the others. There are some standard colors that can be associated with these interfaces. This motherboard does not. And then lastly, here at the bottom, this final interface, a DVI connection. And if you really wanted to be very specific, the pins that are available on that tend to make you believe that this is a DVI digital dual link connection. So that I picked all four of the video connections for this performance-based question: an HDMI, a DisplayPort, a VGA, and a DVI. Now, what's important with this is that CompTIA exam really expects you to be able to recognize these interfaces on site. So it might be nice if you wanted to maybe quiz yourself, go out to Google, do a Google image search for motherboard interfaces, and it will show you motherboard interfaces on the inside of the motherboard and the outside of the motherboard. It's a great way to test yourself because usually you can grab the manual for that motherboard and it will tell you what those things happen to be. These are really important things to know for the exam. If you're not familiar with these interfaces or some of them look a little unusual, or you look at the back of this and you're wondering, wait, what is this one up here? So those are things that you'll run into. You should be asking those questions of yourself to see, oh, what is that one used for? That would be very useful. This DB15, which technically is a DE15, but we often call it a DB15, refers to the interface, the physical design of the interface. So the physical design of that interface is a DE15. The DE15 is most often used for VGA. So anytime you see that, you can almost guarantee that's a VGA connection. Yes, good question in the chat room. So that is our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were able to recognize those interfaces and become more familiar with what happens to be on the back of this motherboard. That interface I was mentioning earlier is an optical interface for audio, SPDIF. We sometimes will call it SPDIF. The interface is usually one that sends a light signal out, so it's a very clean audio output. It's one of the challenges with audio on these motherboards, all these little audio interfaces to the side. There's so much interference, radio frequency interference inside of these devices that having an output that outputs with light gives you a very good high-quality audio stream. So that's what that's for. Hopefully, those are interfaces you know. Make sure you're familiar with those and be able to work through it. I think this is one that might help you as well. Let's shift gears back to a multiple choice-based question. Next on our list is the question that asks, which of the following would be the most likely reason for a macOS spinning wait cursor? Would it be network congestion, an invalid spreadsheet formula, a failing hard drive, a kernel panic, or a browser upgrade needed? The question asks, which of the following would be the most likely reason for a macOS spinning wait cursor? Is it network congestion, invalid spreadsheet formula, failing hard drive, kernel panic, or browser upgrade needed? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's right there on the screen. Plug in your answer right there. Figure out what that happens to be. And for those of you that are watching in the background is a definite real background. Now that I have lights that I can turn on and off in the background, I can actually prove it. So I'll turn off one of the lights that's back there. You can see, not a green screen. It's my actual house. It's my actual office, the studio, for those of you wondering. What's going on back there? It sort of looks green screen-ish. It's a little fuzzy in the background. One of these days, I should just put a green screen in with a picture of that, and then suddenly in the middle have fish go by or something. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out and get those. It messes people up a little bit because the rest of it looks very different from the other side. There's a camera up in the back, and seeing it from that view just kind of makes everything look a little weird. From that, you think the whole thing is kind of dark and messed up. Yeah, I know it's not a green screen. A lot of folks really do. I should start those up. Should start the logs going. Except here in the state of Florida right now, the temperature, for those of you wondering, 67 degrees, going up to 70 degrees Fahrenheit today. So I think I might have it set up to turn some flames on. We might try that during the after show to see if it actually works. Let's see how you did with this question. The spinning ball of death, as they call it, the spinning wait cursor would be the one to have. Let's go through this question that asked, which of the following would be the most likely reason for a macOS spinning wait cursor? Is it network congestion, an invalid spreadsheet formula, a failing hard drive, a kernel panic, or a browser upgrade needed? Let's see how you answered. Let's look at the results. The results show that 45% of you say it's a failing hard drive. 36% of you say, nope, it's network congestion. 17% said kernel panic. So we've really got a good set of answers here, and we're really not quite exactly sure which one it is. 3% said a browser upgrade needed. 1% said an invalid spreadsheet formula. The spinning ball of death. That spinning ball of death is just annoying. It is, I don't even think I have the right graphics set up here. There's what it looks like. It's the spinning weight cursor, and normally it's spinning around on the Mac. Your cursor moves from something that was an arrow and suddenly turns into what we call a beach ball. I'm beach balled. You get a phone call. Well, I was working and then I got the beach ball. Sometimes people will hear it referred to that way. So it's sitting there spinning, and while it's spinning, you can't do anything in the operating system. It's very similar to the hourglass that shows up in Windows. In an hourglass pops up and you can't do anything else in the operating system. This is the Mac OS version of that. So what would cause this thing to just spin and not give you access to the operating system? Well, it's never one thing. It could be many different things. It could be a bug in the application that you're using that is taking all of the resources on a system. It could be that you have bad hardware. This is probably one of the most common reasons for the beach ball of death. And there's slow paging to disk as things are paging back and forth, and it's waiting to get that information back into memory. It may have to cycle the spinning ball there just so you can then get access to the operating system. Sometimes the spinning ball will happen for a second or two, and then you'll get your cursor back. Sometimes it just spins and spins and spins and never stops spinning. And at that point, you got to restart the computer. There's nothing else you can do. Hopefully there'll be something in the logs once you restart that can give you more information on that. So let's look at the answers you gave. I would say the 46% of you that said a failing hard drive, that absolutely is probably the most likely reason in this list for a Mac OS spinning weight cursor. It's a bad hard drive. So it's going the hard drive, it's trying to retrieve or store data, and it's retrying and retrying and retrying, and it can't do anything else until it completes that process. So while it's doing that, your spinning weight cursor comes up and starts spinning and spinning and spinning. Network congestion is certainly something that can slow down your system and slow down communication across the network, but the system's working fine. You're not going to get a spinning ball on your screen because the network happens to be very busy. If that was the case, I'd have nothing but a spinning ball on my screen all the time here. It's constant communication across the network. Normally, the network congestion will show up as a slow file transfer. It'll show up as your browser is sluggish, but it won't cause the spinning ball to come up on the screen, thankfully. We've got 17% of you that say kernel panic. Kernel panic. 17%. A kernel panic in Mac OS, I don't have a picture of it here, and thankfully I can't demonstrate it. A kernel panic is going to show you a black screen with a kernel panic message in the middle. Kind of like a blue screen of death in Windows. Everything on the screen blanks out, and it says, push a key on the keyboard to restart, and you have to restart again. So a kernel panic is more than just a spinning hard drive. The whole screen blacks out to be able to do that. So if you're in that situation, then that is something where you will find kernel panic very different than the spinning drive that happens to be there. There's also, for the last two, browser upgrade needed and invalid spreadsheet formula. Those are things especially associated with software problems. Generally, those don't create a spinning ball because they're just normal software issues. Whenever you start running into those, it does come on. It's pretty important that you're familiar with why your software may not be working, but putting in a bad spreadsheet formula or needing to upgrade the browser will not cause the spinning ball to show up. So that's not the issue either. The best answer here, really the only answer here, is available as Answer C, the failing hard drive, that will give you a spinning ball of death all the time. That is definitely what you would run into. So hopefully that's one that you got right. At least 46% of you got right. That will help you quite a bit as you work through this. So there's a lot to think about on these questions. You'll notice that we've got questions that are about hardware, questions about troubleshooting an operating system. Sometimes these questions are about Mac, they're about Linux, they're about Windows. You could be asked anything from the CompTIA exam objectives. And one of the problems that I see whenever you start getting into dealing with these questions is that there's not a lot of great practice questions out there. It would be nice if you could go out to the internet and there would be just all kinds of practice questions that are the highest quality, that were always right, that were written by people that really knew what they were doing. But if you've been to the internet, unfortunately, you know that's not the case. So I thought it would be important to create a set of practice exams that was written specifically so that you could sort of learn the way they ask the questions on the actual exam without having to worry that you are violating any type of security issue with the exam. So these are all original questions. They've never been published anywhere else. They are my practice exams. Let me show you what they look like. Let's do a quick practice exam, everybody. We'll bring up this practice exam. This is from my 220-1001 practice exam. And the question asks, a user is powered on their computer and received the message, operating system not found. A check of the system shows that the hard drive cables are properly connected. Which of the following would be the next best troubleshooting step? Would it be boot to safe mode, replace the boot drive, restore from a known good backup, or check for removable drives? Now, if you just want the answer, this is a PDF, so you can simply click the quick answer option. I put these links in the PDF itself. And then you've got the details. I'm going to click the details, which will move. I'm on page 6. That jumps me over to page 44. So let's click the details. And it brings up the question again. And it tells me that the answer is D, check for removable drives. And I tell you why I think that is the best answer. I wrote it, so I tell you why I wrote it that way. Now, one of the problems I always have with these practice exams is they tell you why a question is right, but I never get the question right. I always get the question wrong. So how can I really get more understanding of why I got the question wrong? Well, I list out every incorrect answer in my practice exams book, and I tell you why every one of the other answers was the wrong answer with a detailed explanation of why it was the wrong answer. If you get a question wrong, often you're learning more from the wrong answer than you learned for getting it right, which I think is very valuable. In fact, I tell people if you get the question right, make sure you read through the wrong answers as well, because you may find on the exam a question referencing the wrong answer shows up, and it's useful to know what that happens to be. If you still go through those and you think, I don't have enough information, I need more information, I put a link to the video that is the question is based on. So this question is from Objective 5.3, Troubleshooting Hard Drives. There's a link right here that will take you to that video on my website. So you've got a way to pull this information from wherever you might happen to be. These are my practice exams. You can find out more about those at professormesser.com/core1pe. They're $25 by themselves. If you purchase them with my course notes, then you'll get a discount. So I try to bundle things together to give you a little bit better price if you're buying more of those things. The Core 1 practice exams available on my site at professormesser.com/core1pe. Let's do another question. Here's a next question on our list that asks, which of the following would be the best way to integrate an iPhone into an automobile? Would it be Apple Drive, Android Auto, macOS Mobile, iOS CarPlay, Android Traveler? Which of the following would be the best way to integrate an iPhone into an automobile? Would it be Apple Drive, Android Auto, macOS Mobile, iOS CarPlay, and Android Traveler? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. For those of you that were asking earlier about getting back to the original question, I have a back button in my browser. Once you're done looking at that question, I just hit the back button and I can go down to the next question on the list. So I can easily pop over to the details. When I'm finished with the details, I hit the back button and then I can go to the next one. If you did want to annotate, I could always, I have an annotation capability in my PDF reader. I can set a color. And then if I wanted to mark what these happen to be, if I think it's A, I could just mark A. Well, maybe it's not A, maybe it's D. So you've got an option there to work through all of those. So that might help you as you're trying to figure out what to do with this. Let's go back to the question. Be nice if I was able to do that. There we go. So at least some of you can figure these out. These are useful. Not a proprietary question. I do write all of these questions. Thank you for mentioning that. All the questions in the study group and all of the questions in my practice exams are all original questions that I write. These are not farmed out. They are not something I grab from somewhere else. They are all original questions. I think it's important that you're able to do that. Able to get high quality questions written by somebody who's done this for a living, which you don't often find. It's very difficult to find that, as a matter of fact. Let's see how you did with this question, which asked, which of the following would be the best way to integrate an iPhone into an automobile? Is it Apple Drive, Android Auto, macOS Mobile, iOS CarPlay, or Android Traveler? And if we look at the answers, we see that 88% of you say iOS CarPlay is what we would use. We have 10% of you that say Apple Drive. That's one of the things that you would think would make sense. Apple Drive, not actually a thing. Just sort of made that one up with the Apple Drive. A lot of these were made up. The macOS Mobile, which I think is a great name. That's another one that I think would absolutely be a good one to know, but not a real thing. Just made that one up. And Android Traveler, another made-up name. So I try to get real names on here, but there were only so many names available for integration into a car. If you're using Android Auto, that's the thing. Do I have these? I think I do have these. Here we go. Synchronization to the automobile. So connecting to your automobile with Bluetooth or over the wire, you can use iOS CarPlay or Android Auto. Those are the two biggest names that you would find. Yes, or yes, as they mentioned in the chat room, you get one of those cassette adapters and plug it in to the TRS connection. That's what you would do. Of course, that's how that would work. That's what I would do. That's what I used to do. It's so weird now. We simply get in our car and it automatically pairs up and it automatically transfers over to have all of that there. So useful. If you ever rent a car, go and have a look at the CarPlay or Android Auto that's in that. It's surprising the things that you would find in those rental cars. iOS CarPlay, 88% of you chose CarPlay. 88% of you were absolutely right. We fooled nobody with that question. So let's do another one. Let's have another question coming through. This question asks, which of the following technologies would provide the best method of creating reports from consolidated log data? Would it be SIM, proxy, IPS, authentication server, or UTM? Which of the following technologies would provide the best method of creating reports from consolidated log data? Would that be SIM, proxy, IPS, authentication server, or UTM? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Let's see what's there. I agree with the chat room. I think Apple CarPlay / Android Auto is one of the best things ever for a car. It just is so functional and so useful. Just having all of the capabilities there. This is definitely a 1001 question. I'll explain how in just a moment. You'll see. People wonder, where are these questions coming from? You'll notice when I go to the slide that explains the question, right at the bottom is a link to where this question came from. So you can go to the exact video that is associated with it. I put the the number of the objective on there as well. Very useful to know. These are topics I will agree that you will run into. This is a topic you might run into other courses as well. You never know. You never know. I don't want to give too much away. So I'll try to talk a little bit less about the question, a little bit more about Apple CarPlay and how it works. I've used Apple CarPlay extensively in my travels. It just becomes automatic, so useful to have and available. I think that's one that if you don't have it in your car, you're looking to get a new vehicle, make sure it has that capability built in. It will, it's a lifesaver, really is. Is it good or bad that all of our private information is being shared to all of our cars and other things? Not if it's doing us a favor. I think that's the important part. Has to be an upside of this, right? Has to be something, an advantageous function. So I think that's one. Is this a typical type of question in a CompTIA Plus exam? Yeah, sure. Why wouldn't it be? I think it would be. I think most of the exam questions, some of them have 2 or 3 sentences in them. I try not to put long, extensive questions into the study groups. These are study groups and not practice exam groups. So we're trying to learn the topics associated with this that you should be able to apply to whatever the question happens to be on the exam. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, which of the following technologies would provide the best method of creating reports from consolidated log data? Is it SIM, proxy, IPS, authentication server, or UTM? 60% of you say it's SIM, whatever that is. We have 13% that said IPS and 14% that said authentication server. I'm calling that a tie. Almost a tie with the 9% that said UTM. And then 4% of you said a proxy. Let's talk about this weird word, SIM. This is a security information and event manager. This is generally a piece of software that will gather log files from many different devices. It'll gather log files from devices that are switches, routers, firewalls, servers, a Windows server, a Linux server, a third-party server. And it'll just grab the log files from all of those different devices and any alerts coming from those devices and put them into one single database, which is fantastic. The one single database means that you're now able to go into all of this data that you have and start doing some correlations, start pulling up some log files from the past, and have everything in one single place. If you're trying to perform forensics, if you're trying to build back what you think may have happened on the network previously, that is pretty useful to know what that happens to be. So that's why a SIM can be extremely useful for consolidating log files from multiple devices, and it usually has some nice reporting features built into it as well, which means the technology providing the best method of creating reports from consolidated log data is usually a security information and event manager, or a SIM is what that comes from. Absolutely. And if you're wondering about this, this is a 220-1001 question, since many of you are asking about this. It comes from Section 2.5, Network Services. It's in the exam objectives for Core 1. I know it sounds like Core 2. I know it sounds like Network Plus. I know it sounds like Security Plus. Really did come from Core 1. Not making it up. There it is. Now, what about these other options that are there? A lot of information that people chose. For example, 13% said an authentication server. Authentication servers are great for authenticating users. Is that user using the correct username and password? Yes or no? That's pretty much all an authentication server does. An authentication server does not consolidate log data. It does not create reports. It simply is an authentication service. IPS, an intrusion prevention system, very good for stopping known vulnerabilities or types of traffic on the network that you know to be malicious. Very useful to have. That is an IPS, but an IPS does not consolidate log data. It may have some reporting capabilities in it, but it does not consolidate log data. It really can create a report based on its own data, But usually we're sending the IPS data to a SIM. Usually we're sending the authentication server logs to a SIM so that everything is sitting on that SIM. 9% of you said a UTM. The UTM is a universal threat manager, or one of the ways that we look at it today is a next generation firewall, sort of the newer version of a UTM, if you will. You can think of your wireless router that you have at home. That's a good example of a UTM. It has a router in it, a switch. It's doing NAT. It has some security features built into it, certainly performing firewalling, has all of these different capabilities, may even do content filtering. All of this in that device would really turn it into a UTM. But these days, UTMs, we're sort of throwing out UTMs. We're putting in next generation firewalls instead. And lastly, a proxy. Proxies are great for managing the traffic communicating in or out of the network, but neither a UTM nor a proxy consolidate log data. They're usually creating their own logs. And again, a proxy is sending its logs to a SIM. A UTM is sending its logs to a SIM. The authentication server and IPS also sending their logs to the SIM. The SIM is the consolidation point. It is the reporting tool. It has everything in it that allows you to go back in time, consolidate the data, correlate the data together, and create some reports based on what happens to be there. The security and information event manager. That is the right answer. If you answered A, 61% of you got this one absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit and you would like to receive an email from me that has been digitally signed that certifies that you were here watching this video or certifies that you watched this video on a replay, then here's what you need to do. Make sure you follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put December 2021 Core 1. That's all you need to put, so I know where this came from. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, preferably the first line of the message, put the super secret code word of the month, UTM. Yeah, I kind of mixed that one up there. UTM is the super secret code word of the month. Again, you want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address, put in the subject line, December 2021 Core 1, and then in the message itself, put the single word UTM. And if you'd like to put anything else in that message afterwards, you're more than welcome to do so. I do read through every single one of these, so you're more than welcome to do that. If you do that, it takes me about a month. Takes me about a week. Fortunately, it takes me a little bit less than a month to get these emails sent back to you. Sometimes I can do them in a couple days and get that message sent back. And I will provide you with an email that says this grants you 1 hour of a continuing education unit credit that you can use for, well, many different things. Normally people are using it to keep their certifications up to date. Although these days, I think most people are doing things like using CertMaster CE, but you never know. If you're collecting CEUs, I'm more than happy to help you collect CEUs. We can do that, certainly. Let's do another question. We have time. Let's go through another one. Next question on our list asks, a network administrator is using an RS-232 interface. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this connection? Is it Ethernet link, management console, cable modem, keyboard, DSL modem? A network administrator is using an RS-232 interface. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this connection? Would it be Ethernet link, management console, cable modem, keyboard, or DSL modem? If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no comments or answers or anything relating to the question in the chat room. We'll figure it out that way. Everything we'll do will be in this. Now, later on, you can ask questions in the after show. Ask as many questions as you would like. Have no problem addressing those. More than happy to do it. So, yeah, this may be one where we have to figure it out. If you've never used an RS-232 interface, you may not know. Or maybe you have used an RS-232 interface and you didn't even know it. Well, we'll have to figure it out in just a moment. See if you can plug in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock it in. The chat room, it's always a good feeling when you watch the video, you just finished watching the video that has this one in it, and you can get that one right. That's always a good feeling. It's like you cheated almost. No, you did the hard work. You watched the video. See if you happen to know what this is. This is one, by the way, that is indeed a question from the 221001. Really, anything dealing with hardware, I think we probably put most of those in the 221001 category. So this is definitely a hardware interface question, isn't it? And the real problem with this one is knowing what it happens to be. You know, the RS-232 interface. Clayson in the chat room with the $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Clayson says, first time watching live. Thanks for all the help. Well, thank you for your support of the live stream as well. We appreciate that. Thanks so much. It's one of those things that keeps us going. We never know how things are going to go on the internet. It's a weird, crazy place on the internet. So we appreciate your support there. Thanks for being here live, and thanks for your super chat as well. It's always appreciated. Let's see the answer, shall we? Since we're all struggling with this one. Most of us are struggling with this one. I'm struggling with this one. Question asked, a network administrator is using an RS-232 interface. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this connection? Is it an Ethernet link, a management console, a cable modem, a keyboard, or a DSL modem? Let's see what we did. Well, we're not quite sure. We didn't get a majority on this one, but we did get a pretty strong plurality of 41% that say management console. 20% of you say that's a cable modem connection. 16% said Ethernet link, 16% also said DSL modem, and 7% said keyboard. Nobody chose keyboard for an RS-232 connection. I should have put mouse, right? For those of us talking about the mini DIN connections for the mouse, that was purple. I'm trying to remember already. Before there was a mini DIN connection, there was an RS-232 connection. And it looks something like this. It's just a 9-pin or 25-pin connector. And usually it's this DB25 or what we call DB9, but it's really DE9. Well, I'll fight you. We'll figure out what the answer is. It actually stands for Recommended Standard 232, and it's only been around since we landed on the moon in 1969. This is one where it's been around forever. RS-232 is the signal that we're putting over this wire. On our computers, we tend to send this signal over a serial connection with a DB9 or DB25, although you may find newer equipment will take an RS-232 signal being sent over an RJ45 connection that you would plug in. Did I get the keyboard mouse colors wrong? The mouse was green. I used to have a green mouse, and I don't know why that's stuck in my head to be different. This is very often if you go to a connection that is on a router, a switch, a firewall. You know, many of the modern router switches, firewalls will have a USB connection. When you start going back in time, some older ones have an RJ45 connection, and then the super old ones will have a DB9 or a DB25 connection. I went a little too far there. We'll do that question next. But this is one where if you need to configure the switch, you need to configure that device that you're plugging into, and you don't know how the IP addresses were configured. You don't have a way to connect via Ethernet. You just need a way to plug in and gain access to the system. You can bring up a serial console with this RS-232 signal and a cable that is wired properly, usually with a null modem connection for DB25 or DB9, and plug these in. If you're somebody who has to deal with this and you're on the road, then you have one of these cables in your bag. You probably have an adapter that will adapt it to DB25. You probably even have it set up with an RJ45 modular connector so you can pop off the DB9 and pop on or just use the RJ45. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. And if you're like me, and Kareem in the chat room is absolutely right, you have a serial DB9 connector converts to USB that you can use from your serial connection of your laptop. You'll notice there are certain manufacturers, especially Dell, where they have laptop versions that have a DB9 connector in the back. You think, why would we put that on the connector? Because those are specifically built for people that need to go to this old equipment, plug in and be able to use it. These days, most of the time, we're plugging in that adapter, though, the US. But if you've ever plugged in a USB to serial adapter, it is such a pain to get working properly sometimes. Sometimes it's just easier to plug it into 9-pin serial and go with it. So if you hear the terms 9-pin serial, you hear management cable, you hear RS-232, we're really all talking about a similar combination of technologies that allows us to gain access to a console on one of these devices. So that is the answer. Management console. The 42% of you that chose B got it absolutely correct. An Ethernet link does not use an RS-232 signal. Depending on the Ethernet version, it's using 8B, 10B. It's using 8B, something else for gig, isn't it? Or 10 gig. You know, there's different signaling methods used for sending those waves of signals across the wire. So Ethernet links do not use RS-232. RS-232 is a serial connection, a very slow one, and Ethernet link would not be an appropriate use of an RS-232 interface. We also have cable modem. Cable modems usually have an F connector connecting to the cable company side of the modem, and usually on your side of the modem is an RJ45 Ethernet connection. Same thing for DSL, except the RJ45 Ethernet's on the inside, and it's an RJ11 POTS line, plain old telephone system that's going out the other side. And then lastly, a keyboard. Well, we all know now keyboards use a USB connection or that mini DIN connection, although if you go back far enough in time, you may find keyboard and mouse that connects to an RS-232 interface. Usually it's just the mouse. Usually the keyboard's connecting to either a mini DIN or a larger DIN connection. RS-232 was not unusual to find. A mouse, I probably still have a mouse around here somewhere that has a DB9 connector that plugged into a serial port. And you loaded drivers on your DOS computer to be able to use the mouse on that serial port and run Windows 1.1 with, I think we were using PageMaker back in the day. Those were pretty good. But management console is what RS-232 is most commonly used with these days. 43% of you got that one absolutely correct. Roger in the chat room with a $5 super chat. Roger says, got to get back to work. We'll go through once this uploaded. Thank you for your support, Roger. Thanks for getting that in there before you had to leave. He says, thanks, Professor Messer, for doing all you do. Well, thank you for your support for that as well. We appreciate that. And it's another nice thing that we're able to keep these live streams going. We're able to literally keep the lights on thanks to your support, so we appreciate it. I know it's top of the hour, but let's fit in one more question, shall we? Let's squeeze another one in. Since you already saw it, why not give it to you? The question asks, a system administrator is installing an operating system on a newly provisioned cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SaaS, hybrid, IaaS, elastic, or PaaS, or PaaS? Maybe I should just spell them out. A system administrator is installing an operating system on a newly provisioned cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SaaS, hybrid, IaaS, elastic, or PaaS? Which would it be? If you think you know the answer, there's your link. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See what it happens to be. Yeah, that DB9 connection, that serial connection we used for everything. We didn't have USB. So if you don't have USB, the only way to get data in and out that's something that's standardized was RS-232. It's a serial connection. So you would plug in, we'd plug in mice. We would plug in scanners through serial connections. They worked horribly. Sometimes we could connect devices together, like laptops to desktops, and transfer files using software, advanced software such as LapLink. To be able to transfer those, you could use both a serial connection or a parallel connection. which use those 25-pin Centronic or 25-pin or Centronic connections. And they used to have these cables. On the cable had a 25-pin parallel, 25-pin serial, or 9-pin serial, and you just match it on the other side to plug in. Very useful. Video game controllers used 15-pin connectors. They were not serial, RS-232 serial. They were not DB25 or DE9. They were like a DD15. Am I saying that wrong? It's either a DC or a DD. But they were a 15-pin connector. Kind of right in the middle of those. And a little bit bigger than VGA and a little bit smaller than the DB25. But similar in concept. Similar process where, yeah, it's a separate connection. Usually they were on the sound cards. We would have a sound card because your computers didn't make sound unless you got a sound card, and then they could make sound. And then, yeah, there would be a one joystick port on there. Did you have a joystick that used the printer interface, LPT1? Well, that was the world we lived in. We just needed to connect it somehow and have it work. And without USB, this is why we came up with USB. Imagine having all of these devices that you plug in with USB today, and you had nowhere to plug them in. You had to have some type of interface on the computer that wasn't really designed for it. It was just there, and we happened to use it. But now we plug in our mouse via USB, our keyboards, our audio, our network, our storage. We just plug everything into USB. We didn't have that. We didn't have that back in the day. So but now it's so nice to have that. It's so much easier to have to deal through that until you get to the point where your USB keeps rebooting because you overpowered it. Have we spent a lot of time in Windows doing that? I think we have. Let's see how we did with this question. The question asked, a system administrator is installing an operating system on a newly provisioned cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SaaS, hybrid, IaaS, elastic, or PaaS? Let's see how you answered this one. 41% of you say infrastructure as a service. 30% said software as a service. 19% said platform as a service. 8% said hybrid. 2% said elastic. We're not even quite there. The real question is, what does cloud technology turn into in the future? When do we start talking about, remember when we did cloud? Can't wait to see that when that day hits. Here we aren't quite sure because we didn't get a majority. But if we go with the plurality of 41%, which is infrastructure as a service, I think if we go to the next slide, we can see, aha, that is the correct answer. Indeed, sometimes you see it called hardware as a service because you're effectively buying hardware from the cloud provider. And that hardware sometimes comes with an operating system. Sometimes it doesn't come with an operating system. As the name implies, they're just giving you hardware as a service. Infrastructure as a service, sometimes it does come with operating system. But sometimes you have to install your own operating system to be able to do this. So if you're the one installing the operating system, you're installing your own software, you're installing everything and managing it yourself, then you're using infrastructure as a service. That is answer C. 42% of you got that one absolutely correct. Now, what about these others? 29% said software as a service. We always want to go with software as a service, right? Software as a service means we do nothing. It means we just show up. Usually there's a username and a password. We put that in, and suddenly everything is there and available. We didn't have to install an operating system. We didn't have to install any software. We don't have to maintain the system. We just show up. So if you use Google Mail, Yahoo Mail, Proton Mail, anybody's mail, you use Microsoft's Outlook 365, that's software as a service because you didn't have to install it. You didn't have to set up an operating system. You don't have to maintain it. You just show up. And if you just show up, it's software as a service. Now, there's a middle ground that is platform as a service. Platform as a service is the Lego model, which means you go to a provider and you say, I need to build out my own inventory system. And they said, well, don't write it from scratch. Here's a box full of Legos. And they provide you with all these modules on the screen. Well, I need a login box. Okay, I'll grab the login Lego. We'll stick it here. Okay, once we log in, I need to present a list of everything in the database. All right, here's a database list block. We'll stick that Lego on the screen. And then on here, I need a way to add new content to the database. All right, well, I have a module for that, for adding content to the database. We'll stick that on there. So you're effectively putting together, you're building blocks of an application together. Usually an application developer's doing this, but the platform is already there. You don't have to write it from scratch. So that is a platform as a service. So that's the case where sort of in the middle. So you don't have to install the operating system, but the application's not fully complete. We have to kind of do something in the middle to fit all the Legos together, and then you have your application. Hybrid is a mix between public and private cloud computing. Private would be cloud computing in your own data center. Public would be something that you would buy from Amazon, Azure, Microsoft Azure, or some of those others. We've also got elastic or rapid elasticity. Elasticity refers to the way the cloud computing is able to grow faster, grow larger, and then contract smaller depending on the load on the system, and the end users have no idea that you're extending resources or removing resources. All they know is everything's working fine. So it works for me. In this case, since we're installing an operating system, we can assume that we have a completely blank slate to work with, which means that it would indeed be infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. If you chose that answer, which was answer C, you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Each of these questions would be directly from the objectives for the Core 1. Make sure you have a copy of these exam objectives. They are incredibly valuable. They are free. You can find a link to the CompTIA website on my site, professormesser.com/objectives, or go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll give you everything you need to know for downloading those objectives. They are incredibly valuable. They are a great way to determine if you're ready to take the exam because they're a great checklist. Make sure you download those and use them. They are incredibly valuable. They should really be the first thing you download and look through, so you know what you're dealing with before you jump into any of these certifications. We do one of these study groups every month. We do 2 for A+. We do 1 for Network Plus. We do 1 for Security Plus. I guess we do 4 a month if you want to look at it that way. We have another A+ study group for the Core 2 plan for 2 days from now on December the 9th. And then in January, we kick off the new year with, can you believe that, new year, with 2 study groups for A+ on the 4th and the 6th. We have a Network Plus study group on January the 12th and a Security Plus study group on January the 19th. This is usually how we break this out, is to have 2 of the A+ in 1 week, and then we separate the other weeks. In this particular month, I don't have the calendar for this month up, but we have 2 study groups this week. We have 2 study groups next week. So we got a lot going on with study groups. Make sure you check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar, or look at the events calendar that is built into Discord. I update both of those at the same time, so you always have the latest information on when a live event is going to occur. That's professormesser.com/calendar. Well, stick around for the after show. I'm taking questions from the chat room. We're going to be talking about some of this content that we went through today. Don't forget about my Exam Hacks ebook and the vouchers available on my site at professormesser.com/vouchers. We've also got practice exams for the A+ available at professormesser.com/1001success. And don't forget to follow us. We have professormesser.com/Twitter and professormesser.com/Instagram for our daily pop quiz questions. And our YouTube is available for all of our videos, professormesser.com/YouTube. Thanks for being here. Stick around for the after show. We'll do some Q&A. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time on the A+ study group. All right, let's see if I can click the buttons here. Get rid of multiples of me. There we go. No, we could figure it out. Well, the A+ study group content, now I remember some of it. I always write these up well before. These got written up about a week ago, but I've already written the Core 2, the Network Plus, and most of the Security Plus for this month. So I sort of have sat down and tried to get them all done at once. It takes about a day to get everything finished. And that's one where if we're doing it live, I think it's always useful to have all of that there. Let's do the after show now. I mean, the main part of this is over, but that doesn't mean that we can't still do a few extra things. There's the link to the Q&A, the YouTube chat. If you're on YouTube, it's the YouTube chat. If you're on my website, it's the same YouTube chat. It's the same chat no matter where you happen to be. So if you have a question about A+, about IT, or about just anything practically, you're welcome to put it into the chat room. The chat room available at professormesser.com/live, or the chat room right there next to the video on the YouTube. Have that there as well. Question in the chat room: how prepared can I expect to be from just studying the CompTIA A+ for Dummies book and reviewing my videos? Well, as I mention in my video describing the A+ certification, sort of what you need to know when you're doing this, this is kind of a challenge. I tell everybody you should get a good book. The A+ for Dummies is certainly a good book. You should get a set of videos to watch. My videos are a good example of that. And that sounds like the two resources you've already used. But you have two other sets of resources you should consider using. One is a set of practice exams. Usually that's something you do sort of near the end of your studies. And then somewhere maybe before your practice exams, it would be great to get some hands-on labs, some type of practical knowledge or practical work with a motherboard, with an interface card, with networking and being able to understand the networking devices, having something that can take the physical world and link it into the synapses in your brain that is learning all of this content. So really you got 4 resources that would be ideal if you're studying: a book, set of videos, labs, and Q&A. Now, if you want some recommendations on some of those, I have them on my website. There's a pull-down link for A+ where you can find different resources that are available. But this is one where you could get away with only using 2 of those. A lot of people will only grab a book and the videos, and that's what they'll use, and that's perfectly fine for their particular set of knowledge. And if you're already in the industry, and if you're someone who's already worked with this equipment before, you've already worked with these operating systems, that might be enough. You don't have to have all 4 of those, but it sure helps. If you're going into this blind or you need a little extra resources, those are the 4 resources that I would recommend. So although it is one of those that helps, I think that having all 4 is really your best bet. That's the real key. I think, and another question in the chat room that sort of is an adjunct to this, which is, well, how long does it take to do all of this? So one of the things that I tell people is it usually on average takes 2 to 3 months for someone to go through all of this content for a single exam, take and pass that exam. So for both A+, you'd have 2 of those. So it's 2 to 6 months or 4 to 6 months of content. Now, this can change, of course, depending on how quickly you learn, how much time you have for study, what you've done previously, what your existing experience might be. So I've had people come to my site and they've taken the exam a week later. I have other people that come to my site and they take the exam 6 months later. So it depends on what's going on in your world. It depends on what's happening with your study process of things that you have available. So it's really different depending on who you are and what you're doing. But I usually tell people on average 2 to 3 months. It might go, you might be outside the average. You might go longer than 2 to 3 months. You might be on the inside of the average. You might be less than 2 to 3 months. So it just depends on what you're doing. But I think that's a pretty good barometer if you're trying to plan. That's what you run into. Another question in the chat room, cannot find my exam hacks book Is it in the video resources? Well, the Exam Hacks is only available if you've purchased my Success Bundle or if you've purchased a voucher from my site. You would log into your member login, and it's right there. You can download it right from that download page. So try to make it very easy to find it, click on it, and have it downloaded onto your computer. Here's a very common question. It's one that comes up often. How important is it to know all 300 plus acronyms in the exam objectives? This is one. I'm going to bring up the objectives just so we can reference it and have a look at it. There, as you rightly mention in your question, there are some of these acronyms in the exam objectives that are not covered in the video. And unfortunately, that is the case. In fact, there are a lot of these in the objectives. Here's the acronym list in the objectives. Here's a following list of acronyms that appear in the CompTIA A+ exams. That's not true. This is a following list of acronyms that could possibly appear on the CompTIA A+ exams. Candidates are encouraged to review the complete list and attain a working knowledge of all listed acronyms as part of a comprehensive exam preparation program and breakfast. I'm not sure what they mean by that, a comprehensive exam preparation program, when there are acronyms inside of this such as CGA, Computer Graphics and Applications. The CGA standard, have we even seen the CGA standard in the last 20 years? I don't think we have. So although the vast majority of these acronyms are applicable to the things you would need to learn to be able to understand the exam objectives, you will find a number of these are not, that don't apply. Some of them are just wrong. Some of the acronyms are not correct. They've gotten a little better with correcting them over time. But some of these are so old, like PCMCIA is no longer part of the exam objectives. But there it is in the list of acronyms. So I tell people, don't worry so much about this list of acronyms. If you need to know the acronym, it will show up in the studies, in your book, and in the videos. If it's not in a book and it's not in the videos, you don't need to know it. And in fact, don't even worry about these acronyms so much. You want to go further up. If you know the exam objectives, that's all you need to worry about. If you know every single one of these exam objectives, you'll pass your exam without much of a problem. This list of acronyms and as they say, spelled out. The acronym and it's spelled out is not something that you necessarily even need to know. You will not be asked on the exam, what is the spelled out name of AHCI? You'll never get a trivia question like that on your exam. Never, never, never. They will never ask that of you. So if you have a set of flashcards that is simply ASR is Automated System Recovery, ATA is Advanced Technology Attachment, ATAPI is Advanced Technology Attachment Packet Interface, ATM is Asynchronous Transfer Mode, just throw them out. You'll need them. Don't do that to yourself. Don't waste your time. You will not get a question. Now, what it could help you with ultimately is if you get a question on your exam, let's find one here that makes sense, that we can reference. So for example, I think I used one of these in, I'm trying to find one that I used in one of the questions today, but not even necessarily something we need to worry about to that level of detail. But let's say you get one that says it's an RJ45 connector. When would you use that? You know, knowing that is registered jack function 45 doesn't help you at all. That doesn't help you answer the question of why you're using this RJ45. It's practically worthless. And by the way, we never call it that. Hey, could you pass me a registered jack function 45? We never do that. We say, do you have a cable with RJ45 connector on it? We almost don't even remember what the actual names are. But some of these could help you. For example, if you have a question about RAID, if you knew that RAID stood for a redundant array of independent or inexpensive disks, that might help you on a question. So I don't want to tell you these are worthless because there is some value to it, but what you should be learning is learn the abbreviation. It'll be useful to know what that abbreviation stands for. And then more importantly, ask yourself, when would you use this? How is this technology applied to IT? That's a more important question that's going to help you on your exam. So I think that's the one I think that that might do that. If you're on my site and you're looking at the book options and you say it's not showing the images, your browser's blocking it. So turn off the browser, the block that you have in your browser, and you'll be able to see the images for those books. Those images are coming from Amazon, but it's being displayed on my site, and many browsers consider that a security concern because the images are being hosted elsewhere, but I can't help that. Just tell your browser not to block them, and you'll be able to see them there. So hopefully that helps a little bit with what you're doing. Alex in the chat room with the $10 super chat, bringing the heat. Thank you, Alex. Alex says, I got my Security Plus September 19, 2021, using my practice exams and my videos. I'm very proud of my Security Plus practice exams, by the way, so I'm glad they helped. And watching all of my live 601 study sessions, which I love doing those as well. These are always a lot of fun. So thank you for watching them. Shortly after, perhaps more important, I was able to land my first cloud job. Thank you, Professor Messer. You did all the hard work, Alex. Congratulations on your Security Plus. Congratulations on a job dealing with cloud technologies. That is a valuable set of skills. You're going to learn amazing things, and you probably already have at this job if you're able to get this job in September. That is a fun and exciting set of technologies to learn, and you'll be able to use that the rest of your career. So congratulations on getting that. And thank you also for the $10 super chat. We sure appreciate it. Let's do some more questions from the chat room. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Would I suggest flashcards for the port numbers? You could, but again, you're not trying to sync together ports and the name of the port. You aren't going to get a question that says, what protocols or what service commonly uses TCP port 80? You're not going to get much of that. But it is useful to know some of these for things like password questions. If you go to my Take 10 challenges on my website and you go to that page, well, I clicked the wrong link. I clicked the ad. Don't do that. If you go to the Take 10 challenge on my site or go to professormesser.com/take10, I have some quizzes there, but I also have performance-based questions. For example, performance-based question number 1, if I load it up, I think I might have clicked the wrong thing. There we go. I have right on the screen something that can help you with your port numbers. So if you're trying to memorize these, you need something more than just a set of extra numbers. I'm just going to randomly just drag and drop these. You can piece these together and then submit the answers, and it will tell you, can't see the submit answer at the bottom. It will tell you if you got any right or how many you got wrong, and it will tell you how long it took and give you a report at the end, and then you can step through it again. Let's start again. There it is. So that's on my website, professormesser.com/take10. It's one way to do it. But as I mentioned, it's much more important that you understand why TCP 25 is matched with and then what you would do with it. It's all about the implementation of the technology that's the most important part. Memorizing what a port and protocol is just so you can match them together is slightly useful, but you have to add in that other piece. You have to add in that additional, why are you using this? Why is it important to know that HTTP is 80 and HTTPS is 443? Why does that help me? And it helps you if you understand what those services do and when you would use them. And that's what CompTIA is going to ask of you as well. So make sure you're familiar not just with the port numbers, but with how all of these things work together. Pretty important. The other questions in the chat room. Let's see if we can flip through here. So those of you, a few folks saying thanks for the videos. You're welcome for the videos. Absolutely. Say there's a question about SSL TLS. Would the email ports be interchangeable or would it just be the secure version? Well, if there's a question about SSL, which is also a question about TLS, that's secure, right? You're not dealing with something that's not secure. But the questions will be very clear. A lot of people will run into really ambiguous and poorly written practice exams, and they'll believe for some reason that the actual exam is this bad. But that's not the case. The actual exam is very clear on what it's asking, and the answers are very non-ambiguous. There's a clearly defined right answer, and if you know the right answer, it pops right out on the exam. It's very clear what the right answer happens to be. You will almost never see a question on the exam where, well, it could be this one, but it might be this one. That doesn't happen. They are very good at providing you with questions that have a very specific question and a very directed answer. And I think that's important. A lot of folks will go through practice exams, and I've seen them online, that are just awful. They are not good, some of these practice exams online. And they tend to think, well, this is a dumb exam I'm taking because these questions are awful, when in fact the questions were written by someone apparently that did not have a very good grasp of English, but did want to fill up some content on their website. If you ever run into bad practice questions, just stop using them. Don't use those practice questions, and I think you'll be fine. Let's say another set of questions from the chat room. This is more of a kind of an inside website piece. I purchased Network Plus notes the same time as A+, but notice there's a new exam and new notes for Network Plus. Well, this is sort of the standard thing that happens with CompTIA exams is every 3.5 years, the exam is retired out and a new one comes along. But usually there is a 6 to 9 month period where both exams are available. So if you have purchased or studied from, for example, the N10007 Network Plus content, continue to do so. That exam is going to be around until June. So don't worry about the new stuff. Whether you pass the new exam or the old exam, you get exactly the same cert. There's no functional benefit from taking a newer exam other than it's harder because there's less content available. There's less learning materials available. Fewer people have taken the exam before. And in the case of Network Plus, it's 40% new content. So why not use the content that everybody has and use the N10007? But let's say that you've gotten to June and now you just haven't taken it yet, and you bought this stuff and now it's practically worthless because that exam has been retired. If you go back to my website and log into your members section, you can upgrade it for 50% discount, around 50%. But there's an upgrade cost, so you don't have to purchase at the full price to move from one version to another. So you got a little bit of a benefit, a cost benefit, that if you run out of time, at least you don't have to rebuy everything. You can get a discounted rate for upgrading it, because I don't want to have you trapped with that old content either. Not useful to have there. Let's do some more questions from the chat room. I'm reading through. You'll bear with me a moment. We'll have a look at some of these. Another question. Do I need to really focus on cable speed specifications, such as cable modem being 14 megabytes through 250? Well, the answer, whenever you get to a question that says, do I need to know this? You should always, always, always go back to the exam objectives. So for in the case of that particular set of technologies, one of the things that it will put into the exam objectives is, let's talk specifically about cables, explain basic cable types, features, and their purposes. And if you talk about a USB cable, USB versus USB 2.0 versus USB 3.0, how do you compare those? It's the same interface, but clearly we need to understand the types, the features, and their purposes. Well, the features of that particular set of versions lends itself to speed. Those are faster. The newer ones are faster. Well, how much faster? Well, you need to know that, which is going to help you if you're in a situation where you're trying to define how fast is that going to go. Is it going to be fast enough for our purposes? Well, let's see. Is it USB 2.0 or 3.0? And then you can make a decision based on those. Same thing for some of these other sections where you have to select, install, and configure storage devices, install and configure other devices and cards, peripheral types. You know, all of these really help you make a decision about, can I use that technology to do what I need it to do? And usually the exam objectives will give you a hint as to what you should be learning along those lines. So if you're ever trying to figure out, do I really need to know this? Go back to the exam objectives. That's going to tell you if you really need to know this. I think it's probably one of the best resources available. It would be important for you to have a very solid foundational knowledge of everything that's in the exam objectives. Don't take your exam until you can go through this list and check off every single one of these bullets. And if you run into one, you're thinking, oh, what's an M2 drive? I'm not sure what they say M2 here, an M.2 drive. Well, gosh, I need to learn more about that. Let me go learn more about that. So then you can check that one off and you can keep moving. That's, I think, more important than anything is knowing those exam objectives. And as I mentioned, if you're able to check all those off, you're ready for your exam and you're going to do just fine on that exam. No problem there at all. Let's talk about some other questions in the chat room. We have Ready Up Jerry in the chat room said, just landed my first IT job at an MSP, a managed service provider. Getting trained and educated thanks to my channel. Thanks, Professor. Congratulations on that job. Those are fun jobs, managed service provider jobs, because you're doing so much different types of technology integrations, working with so many different technologies across many different customers, that you're just a sponge trying to keep up. You're just getting hit with a fire hose and trying to drink. It's a lot to take in. But when you start getting in and getting the feel of it, you'll find that you now have a very broad knowledge of a lot of different technologies. And you can then use that knowledge effectively to go anywhere you'd like. So MSP it's a lot of hard work. There's many people, sometimes your customers are yelling at you because their network is down, their system is down, their software isn't working. It's your job to get it back up and running. So some people consider that to be very stressful. I consider it to be more of a challenge because people are just going to be frustrated when that happens. Let me fix your frustration. I got this. The other piece of that is that you're learning so much that if at that point you wanted to go work for almost any company, you will be very familiar with a wide range of the technologies that they already use. And even if it's maybe a firewall type that you're not familiar with, you're still familiar enough with the concept of what that device happens to be, even if you were someone who worked with a different type of equipment. So a lot of fun with those types of jobs. I used to work with a VAR, not a managed service provider, but we did a similar type of thing at the value-added reseller where we would provide similar support functions. And it is a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of interesting people, a lot of people who know a lot about technology. You can learn and sponge off of not only the people you work with, but the people who are your customers. It's just a fantastic opportunity to learn. We often talk about help desk as being the most common way into the corporate environment. MSP is probably right behind it because we need warm bodies on the MSP side, answering the phone, going to the site, fixing the problems, resolving the issues. But we also, at some point, need to specialize. You know, the way that you move up in IT is you become a specialist. You find a technology you really like and you learn as much as you can about it. So that's one of the things I commonly recommend to people is if you are in one of these jobs, you're in the help desk, you're in the MSP, you're trying to figure out what do I do next? What's my next step? Find a technology and learn everything you can about it. So if you're at the MSP and you think, I'm really enjoying the things that I'm doing with Microsoft Azure, or I'm really enjoying the things I'm doing with network switching and routing. Those are two areas of IT where we always need people. So you could become a specialist with Azure, with Microsoft's online cloud-based services, or You become a specialist with Cisco switching, Cisco routing, firewalls. And all of these kind of lead into, ultimately, up the ladder, you can position yourself for a very nice security position. Because one of the things you'll notice is there's not a lot of entry-level jobs in IT security. IT security requires that you already have a good knowledge of operating systems, networking, software. Where do you get all that knowledge? Well, you get it down in the trenches. You get it by spending time at the MSP, by specializing in an operating system or networking and growing into those security roles. So that's certainly where I would position this as well. In the chat room, question, I'm considering computer science versus a cloud degree. Don't know which route to take. Well, those are two dramatically different technologies. Those are ridiculously different. Those could not be more different. I'll give you an example of this if I can find it very quickly. I did a video, and I think there's a link to this video in the YouTube video description on how to get a job in IT with no experience. And one of the things that I bring up as an interesting sort of talking point is that there's a Venn diagram that you can present that talks about information technology and computer science. Here's the diagram now. And you can see IT and computer science, for some reason, people outside the scope of technology think that computers is programming. End of story. There was a governmental push, and the U.S. federal government was kind of pushing a number of years ago that everybody should learn to code. Why? Why should everybody learn to code? That makes no sense. So everybody should do this on the right side with computer science. Shouldn't we really be also saying, and then we should find people that can support the systems that are running the code that these people are writing? There's perhaps even more of an emphasis over here. I would say information technology. I drew these as two equally sized circles, but I would say the information technology circle probably bigger than the computer science. Let the fighting begin. Maybe it isn't. Maybe computer science. I guess it depends on how you qualify it. But I would say if you're trying to determine what should I do for a living, computer science is programming, hardware development, building software to run hardware, anything dealing, we'll put into the very large area programming. Programming is over here. If you are coding, if you're learning to code, you're over here on the computer science side. I don't like coding. I used to do a lot of coding. I used to have my own software company where I would create network management software. It was okay, but I realized not the thing I really enjoyed the most. I really enjoyed operating systems, storage technologies, networking, routing, security, making systems work, integrating them together, building them, planning them, backing them up, restoring them, disaster recovery, all of that, everything you would find on the information technology side. And as you can see, not a lot of overlap. So if you're in information technology, you don't need to know how to code. I mean, you need to know how to script. Scripts are not application development. Scripts are not coding. I know it's programming. Technically, it's all programming. But scripting is not the same thing as building an app. It clearly is not. The best people in computer science that are really good at building applications, they are folks that really do understand how to do this and have spent years going through the process of learning the best way to do application development. So I would say this is not a very difficult decision to make. There's really not a lot of comparisons that you can make of those two. If you want to do programming and you really like programming, you'd like to build your own apps, and you would like to build and integrate applications on the web, in the cloud, or for mobile devices, computer science is a perfect fit for you. If you're someone who likes operating systems. You like working with Windows and Linux. You like integrating applications into that. You like having databases. You like having the network and working with switching and routing and IT security. Then having something on the IT side is a good solution. And certainly a cloud technology degree, cloud computing degree kind of fits into that IT side of things. So that's why I think there's a good way to determine which thing you like the most. But just remember that it's really important that you follow that path, that you understand the differences. In fact, in the chat room, folks were even saying, I wish I had known there was so much difference between the two. If you go to a university, for example, this is one of those things I've talked about before in study groups, and it's kind of infuriating for someone who's a technologist, is if you go to a university, they are all about showing you how to be a computer scientist. They will put you through the process of engineering, of software development, and they will give you a degree in computer science. It's difficult to find a 4-year university or college that has a true information technology degree. For whatever reason, these large universities have just felt that IT is not something that they should be teaching people. They are teaching, as they often like to say, we are there to teach. We are not there to train. We are not there to explain to someone how to connect to a switch and log in and configure it for spanning tree. That is so beneath us. It is much better to do something cerebral and to create a computer science and build an application. That is the purpose of a formal degree. Doesn't make sense, does it? It made no sense when they said it. It makes no sense when I repeat it. But it's just sort of the world we live in right now, is that there's a lot more emphasis and need to get good IT people, and yet a very large gap between when you leave high school and when you get a job and trying to find good IT training. Now, what this means for you is this is great. The fact that universities aren't teaching information technology, stay with me. The fact that universities are not teaching information technology means there's fewer people in information technology for you to compete with. So if I had to find the silver lining, there it is. So that's a good example of how you can earn or learn information technology and then apply that to getting a position with a company that needs your skills, because it's hard to find good technologists because of that. I would say it certainly contributes to it. The part that I think really helps, and people are mentioning this in the chat room, is there are organizations, third parties, and even some colleges and universities that do have a proper information technology program. They're starting to figure out that, oh, wait a second, we could have people come out of this school with a knowledge of operating systems, networking, and security, and they can work towards getting a 6-figure salary within 5 years. Why wouldn't you do that? Why? But you still have English literature, which is never going to get me a 6-figure income. I know it's more than just the money. So, but I'm trying to give you a perspective of there's an end game to IT, and that end game is something that you can enjoy, that you can learn from. Every day you're learning with information technology. It's a side of the world that you can apply to almost anything now. Every company has IT, right? So it's important that we have these skills. And I agree. My daughter did get an IT degree from a 4-year private college because we weren't able to find a public school in Florida that provided a true information technology degree. My son got a cloud computing degree from a private organization. Same problem. So effectively, it was a bigger investment to fill in that circle, probably because schools weren't really teaching it in my neck of the woods. Now, if you just want to be a programmer, you want to build some apps, you got plenty of choices to choose from. Almost every college or university would do that. But there are some very, very good options out there for IT programs. And I think that you should do lots of research. If you're in this situation where you're trying to figure out which circle do I go with, first look deep and figure out, what do I like to do? Because these don't often interact with each other. It's not easy to take skills from one side and apply it to the other side. It doesn't work that way. These are truly independent circles here. That I've probably even made the gap in the middle a little too big. There's not that much of a gap between those two. And so it's up to you to figure out, what do you like doing? There's both of these, by the way, absolutely fantastically viable careers that pay very well. You just have to figure out which one you like to do and then go with that, which is probably the best possible situation you can be in as a technologist. If somebody wants to get into technology and you're trying to figure out, what do I want to do? Being able to choose what you like is very powerful. It's something that is really definitive for your entire career, where you can, and in fact, if you get into IT and you're working with operating systems and you become a Linux guru and you're getting into Linux, and then one day you wake up and say, Linux just is not doing it for me the way it used to do, but I sure like the way that I can network these Linux devices together. And now suddenly you're off to another part of your career that's doing networking. Just like that, you were just able to simply move to pivot right there in the middle of it. And now you're doing networking. But you're doing networking with a strong understanding of the operating system world that you just came from. So this is the really fun part of IT, is there's never lack of movement, of mobility, of career change within IT. You got plenty of things you could do, plenty to learn. So figure out which one of those circles you want to go with and go with that. That was a very good question. I probably droned on a little bit too long, and threw a little bit too much of my personal opinion in there, but I just went through this with my own kids. We just went through this process of trying to figure this out. And it's a challenge. I am absolutely empathizing with the challenges you have in figuring out where to go and how to make that happen, because it is a little bit of a challenge. Finding the right thing. In your particular area, maybe you can find a school that fits a little bit better than the ones that I've done here as well. But you never know. There's plenty of things you can work through for those. Along the same lines, I kind of like this question from Bo saying, switching careers due to physical limitations, need a sedentary job somewhere where you can just sit down in a chair, do your job. Are there any IT jobs that I should not pursue? Well, there are some. For example, if you are someone who is working for a manufacturer, usually you're doing this in the field as a systems engineer or sales engineer. There's a lot of travel there. You're having to get on a plane, travel to another city, hop in a rental car, drive to a customer site, have some meetings, drive back to the airport or drive to a hotel, spend the night. The next day you repeat the process the next day. So that is that I think is probably not going to work if you just want to sit in a chair, or you need to be able to sit somewhere and do this. But there are plenty of jobs in IT that allow you to do that, where you can come in, you can do network support, you can do IT support, you can work with databases, with operating systems, with network devices, with security, where you are at your desk all day. Same thing kind of applies on the computer science side as well. If you want to become a programmer, you're next to a keyboard all day. You're going to take the keyboard everywhere you go because you're just typing. So there is a set of programming that definitely fits that. You are in a chair typing on your computer. Or you could be a content creator on YouTube. I sit in a chair and type quite a bit. I have to get up to work out. I have to go somewhere else to get exercise. So that's one of those that sometimes you can find jobs in IT. There are absolutely no movement whatsoever. I am a good example of that. It's a struggle because you have to kind of plan the physical side of it outside the scope of what you're doing. When I was a systems engineer, I was that guy who was going to the airport, flying to a place, getting in a rental car, going to a customer, constantly in motion. It was very remarkable how many calories I was using just moving from place to place every day, because you'd see 3 customers in a day. You were traveling around, you were moving, you were grabbing your bags, you were lifting things, you were running to the plane, you were going to sleep on the plane, you're waking up and then running again. But that's one of those, I think, that that it just depends. It's a different way of living as a systems engineer. It's kind of an unusual IT job. It's not that unusual, but relative to all of the others, it's sort of unusual. And I would meet with customers who would say, "Oh, I could never do what you do." But to me, that's what I did every day for 20 years. Was going on the airplane and going to the hotel, and I was the travel person and going places. There's a lot of that. I think if you're someone who likes to work for a corporation, you're in a support role or an IT role, you're pretty much at a desk most of the time. It's very rare that you would need to get up to do heavy lift. There's practically no heavy lifting in IT, unless you happen to get one of those new firewalls, those new Palo Alto boxes. You need equipment just to lift it up into the rack. They're big. But then you get into OSHA, right? You can't lift too many things. That's not allowed. It's kind of the benefit of IT. There's always a way to get there. But if you were, you wouldn't want to be someone who worked with cabling. You got to get up in the ceiling. You got to extend the cable out. That's not the job you want. You want IT support, operating systems, networking, security, databases, cloud. That's what you want. I think that's a good place to go. That's a good place to start anyway. And there should be a lot of good options for you in your area, just in those particular areas. In the chat room, programming is always a plus for an IT guy. And let me qualify this. Let me qualify what I mean. When I say programming, I mean somebody who is writing an application. They're building an app for a mobile phone. They're writing an application on the web. They're building out an application at a platform as a service provider. That is application development. That is when I use the word programming, what I mean. In IT, you need to know how to script. And I very specifically use those terms because scripting is a relatively simple thing to learn compared to application development, compared to programming. It's not simple in itself. Scripting and doing scripting very well is a very challenging thing and sometimes very difficult to learn, but it's relatively easy when you compare it to someone writing an app. You don't even have to come close to the complexities associated with object-oriented programming, understanding memory management. You don't have to deal with any of that stuff. People who write applications do. But you as an IT professional, you need to know how to script. So, for example, if you wanted to learn a skill today that you could put on your resume that would get their attention, you should learn everything there is to learn about PowerShell if you are a Windows person, and Python if you are just any person, because Python really applies across the board: Linux, Mac OS, Windows, whatever. Those two particular areas are desperately needed by employers. So being able to talk about what you have done with PowerShell and what you've been able to automate, that's what we're talking about, is automation. We're not talking about programming. We're not talking about application development. We're talking about automation and scripting. What you've been able to automate and you can explain to a prospective employer, here's what I can do with PowerShell. I'm very knowledgeable in PowerShell, and here's things I've done. Or same thing on Python. I've worked with Python, and here's what I've integrated with, and I've got a Python app that goes out to my cable modem. It grabs statistics. It brings them down and creates a graph for me. That's a very simple Python app that you have built, a Python script that you have built. And that Python script, building out a view of these statistics, you can now start applying that to integrating with firewalls, integrating with switches and routers, making them do the things you need to do. If you're able to take a library or understand how to do some type of REST implementation or REST integration, R-E-S-T, that is very useful knowledge to have. So pick one of those today. Pick PowerShell, pick Python, go learn everything you can about it. You know, that's, if you want to do better, if you want to be better, if you want to be more competitive, if you want to be the one at the top of the list, those are the two things you should learn. Those are incredibly valuable skills to have. Do I know of any good specific resources for learning PowerShell? There's tons. There are tons of books and tons of websites and tons of YouTube videos on PowerShell. There's just there's a cornucopia. There is a plethora. There is a wealth. There's so many available. Anything will do. Go out and learn it. Same thing for Python. Incredibly useful. I think that's what you should focus on. Is either one of those. Once you get into it, you learn the basics, you'll have enough knowledge to be able to then apply that to other things with Python or with PowerShell. So you'll be able to get the basics and say, now I need to know how to do this. What resources are out there that can teach me that? And you can kind of move that direction with those technologies. Both of those, you can't go wrong, and both of them are even better. Let's not pile on, just pick one. You know, if I had to pick one today, it's Python, you know, because that applies across the board, I think. Question in the chat room from Matt. Passed the Network Plus on December 2nd. Congratulations. That's a great certification to have, great knowledge to have, because networking touches everything. I got an entry-level job in the eDiscovery field. That's exciting. That's a good field to be in. Is it a good entry level to begin my IT career? It certainly is. It certainly kind of positions you well to start gathering skills for IT security. I think that's one of those great parts of the business to be in. Everything sort of leads into IT security ultimately. It leads in there. I believe that anyway. And that is a completely biased opinion from somebody who used to work in IT security, cybersecurity. So of course I lend my knowledge that direction. It tends to be that's where the industry goes anyway for those. And I know we're sort of at the top of the hour, but let me finish a couple more questions that are here. Another question, which side of that Venn diagram is cybersecurity on? Here's the thing. There's no such thing as cybersecurity. There isn't. It doesn't exist. There's no thing you can point to and go, there it is. There's cybersecurity. Doesn't exist. It's a completely made up marketing term so that every company that had anything to do with anything relating to security can call themselves cybersecurity. That's what cybersecurity was. That's where that term came from. It did not exist prior to the marketing team grabbing it. That's why you will often hear me describe IT security, because IT security are all the things associated with making sure our servers are secure, the data that's in our databases is secure, making sure that people are able to authenticate properly to the network and securely to the network, that our encryption methods are working the way we would expect, that we can build secure encrypted tunnels between different locations, that we can make sure that people connecting to our network that shouldn't be here are prevented from gaining access, and that legitimate traffic is allowed through. That's IT security. On the computer science side, there is just as big an emphasis in security. You have to be able to write applications that don't have these security vulnerabilities. So there is an aspect of cybersecurity that overlays all of this. So when somebody says, I want to do something with cybersecurity, my first response is, what do you mean by that? Because that could mean anything. Oh, I'm interested in making sure that my cryptocurrency is secure. Okay, well, that's a completely different thing. You know, it just can come from anywhere because cybersecurity is such a broad, overarching description of what it is. It's not a thing. Can't even point at it. So it's one of those where it's difficult in that conversation unless you start breaking down, what do you mean by that? Now, I will often use cybersecurity in context of IT just because people like to hear it. Sometimes when I'm talking to somebody who only understands the word cybersecurity, I will use that term. But very often, and we've even done that today, I've said IT security so that I can specifically say this is relating to security inside of that IT bubble, inside the IT circle. That's the important part. From my perspective, that's the only one I care about. Doesn't mean that computer science isn't better or less equipped to handle the requirements of somebody knowledgeable in cybersecurity. It absolutely is and absolutely should be. But I'm an IT guy. The certifications we're talking about are IT certifications. The need to secure data, operating systems, networks, and all the like are IT jobs. So, and I think that's the one I find most fun anyway. So that's why I mentioned that. So we'll sort of put the end bow on this by repeating some of the things we talked about earlier because it's so hard you will see online that there is websites that will tell you that the current A+ goes away on January the 15th. Completely unsubstantiated rumor and not true. The earliest possible retirement date for the existing A+ certification is July. And I suspect it's even going to be later than that. We'll know more after the beginning of the year. But don't worry. The certification that you're studying right now is the one you'll be taking and passing well before the retirement date shows up. So don't even worry about it. There will not be a new A+ certification released on January 15th. There won't be. You won't see one. CompTIA has even said this effectively in a forum that's on their site. But they have an instructor network where instructors can communicate within a forum. It's a closed forum, but it's just for instructors. But there have been posts there that talk about A+ being released perhaps in the first quarter of next year, but certainly not January 15th. That is not the latest schedule. And we'll see where it goes. I think the release of Windows 11 may have also pushed it a little bit because you don't want to come out with a new version of an A+ certification that isn't including the latest operating systems. That has happened before, and it's just a mess. So if you can integrate it now's the time to do it. Windows 11, not very different than Windows 10 anyway. Except for that user interface, it's a thing. You know when there's a lot of websites that say, here's how to change the interface to look more like Windows 10, that, you have those users, and they need to be able to have options. So it's sometimes good to have those options. CompTIA will eventually announce dates associated with changes to the A+ certification and the overlap period, and you'll have an exact number, but they will give you plenty of time. I suspect we're probably even, since Security Plus had a 9-month overlap, Network Plus had a 9-month overlap, certainly A+ is going to have a 9-month overlap. Maybe they won't. Maybe it'll just be 6-month. I don't know yet. None of us know yet. But we do know, I can tell you, based on the dates that I've seen, it's not happening on January 15th. We have at least until July and probably after. No worries. Thankfully, no worries. So keep studying. Do not wait for a new version of an exam to come through, you should be getting your certification now. Never wait to get certified, because I guarantee you other people are not waiting, and they're going to go in for these same jobs. They're going to have the certification and you're not. So it's much better to have this certification in your pocket than to be for some reason waiting for a new version of a certification that ultimately gives you exactly the same cert. That doesn't even make sense. Don't do that. It's all the same. So why not do that? I think that's a good way to approach it. Well, that brings us to the end of another hour of the study group, but we've got more study group on Thursday. Come on back in a couple days. We've got more study group to go through. We'll do a Core 2 study group where I'll have plenty of brand new questions specific to the CompTIA 220-1002 Core 2 exam, and we'll be able to do even more of this. It's always fun to go through these. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being in our first hour where we did the Q&A, and thanks for your great questions in hour number 2. There's always something interesting going on. Come on back on Thursday. We'll do another one. Thank you for watching the replays. Thanks for subscribing to the podcast, and thanks for your support of the website. It really is appreciated, and we'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group.